I'll give you my perspective.
Go ahead.
And this was, I don't think I've ever shared this anywhere. Maybe I have. Not sure if I covered it in the book or not. But we were talking about taking flying lessons earlier. And I remember it was in January or whatever it was, maybe whenever it was. I was down in Orlando, Florida, finishing up my pilot training. And a guy who has now passed away by the name of Zane Bresloff. And I don't know if you knew Zane or not.
Barely.
But Zane had worked for WWE a long, long time ago, and he came to work for WCW. He was a promoter. He was a local promoter in Denver. But he became a very good friend of mine. And he still knew a lot of people who were at very high levels in WWE. And we're on a roll, and everybody's doing great. And I remember Zane called me one afternoon when I was in Kissimmee taking flying lessons. He goes, Eric, you're not going to believe what they're doing. And in my mind, these things all kind of happen close together. He said, they're going to spend a boatload of money doing a Super Bowl ad. Really? I thought they were almost out of business. Last I heard, they were pulling the water coolers out of the building because they can't afford to put the water in them. Now they're doing a Super Bowl commercial? I said, wow, that's crazy. And you were getting hot, really hot right about then. And then he called me back, I want to say the same day, but it might have been a couple of days. He goes, oh, you're not going to believe this. They're doing a deal with Mike Tyson. What? Mike Tyson was gold at that time. So I think it was a combination. I don't know what was going on there at the time. You obviously you were closer to it than I was, clearly. But it's like anything else. It's no one thing. It's a combination of a series of things. But I think between whatever the mental process was or creative process of going, okay, take the blinders or take the restraints off, go compete. Let's bring in Mike Tyson. Stone Cold Steve Austin's becoming a great character. Vince is going to turn heel. There's just all these major shifts that were happening, just boom, 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 one right after another. I knew at the end of that phone call when I heard what you guys are doing, based on and then watching you get hot, I knew right then we were toast. I knew it.
What did y'all do? I mean,
we didn't do anything, and I couldn't do anything. And that was a frustration for me. Right. And that's where my head started to snap, because at the same time you guys were doing that, I had a bunch of executives from Time Warner who had never watched 7 seconds of wrestling telling me what wrestling was going to be like on the network. So not only could I not compete with WWE at the time or you guys, I couldn't keep my own boat from sinking because there was 25 people telling me how to row it that didn't have any idea about the business. So we were fighting against you guys, which I don't think we could have won anyway. And at the same time, we were fighting against ourselves. They were cutting our budgets in half. It was like, oh, do another primetime show. But I know we gave you, $10 million in your budget to do it last year, but we're going to take that away from you. But do it anyway.
Right.
I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So it was a bad, bad time.
In the book, Controversy Creates Cash, you left the business, or they let you go, but then brought you back.
Yeah, that's about a year after, between you getting hot and WWE taking over and really coming back strong, and things started really hitting the wall with Turner. And I was picking fights. I had plenty of time left on my contract. I wasn't worried about that. And I was so pissed off and here's where I made a couple mistakes in retrospect. One is I didn't know that Ted Turner no longer had control of his own company.
Right.
I didn't know that. I'm not sure Ted knew it at the time, quite honestly. I assumed Ted had my back. So I was picking fights with executives because I had done it in the past.
Right.
And I'd always come out on top because I delivered. I won. I was picking fights with people that were so high above me, assuming that I had somebody that had my back, not knowing I didn't. He was gone. Ted was gone. They knew it. I didn't. And I was making so many enemies at a very high level that finally one day Harvey Schiller called me. I'll never forget. I was driving home from work one night, and Harvey called me and said, Eric, you need to be in my office at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. I said, why? So I never met Harvey.
Right.
He never called me to his office. He said, just be here. I knew.
Yeah.
I knew. And I went into his office, and he said, you need to go home. So what do you mean I need to go home? I got a pay-per-view. Said, no, you don't. You need to go home. He said, Eric, just take my word for it. Go home. It'll be okay. I said, cool. I went home. I knew, but I went home. They played me. Meaning they had to, as long as they paid me, I couldn't go anywhere, but I had a lot of time left on my deal, and I was making decent money. So I went home, told my wife what happened. I said, honey, I'm jumping in the plane. I'm going to Wyoming, and I'm going to go fishing. See you in a week or two. I did. I just jumped in my plane and flew to Wyoming.
So how long were you gone before they brought you back?
About 3 months, 4 months. And I was flying back. It was after the Super Bowl. And I had actually flown. I went up. I was flying like an idiot at the time. Flew up to Minnesota, got my brother and sister, flew them out to Wyoming, watched Super Bowl together, dropped them off in Minneapolis. And my wife and I stayed in Minneapolis one night. And I was watching television. And I was watching Monday Night Raw. And I think that's when y'all brought Malenko and Benoit and everybody in.
Yeah.
I watched that from like a Chili's restaurant. And I couldn't hear it because it was up on a monitor far away, but I could see it. And I was watching that. I said, I bet you Turner will call me back. WCW will call me within the next week. 2 days later, I got a phone call. Oh, what do you think about coming back?